Hello, 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 ladies and gentlemen. Hi, it's Zach with Team Low Expectations, and today I'm joined with a lovely friend of the team, our good buddy Matt. And Matt's been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for about 7 months. He's been to a couple events larger than the locals, and I want to know what it's like from a new Yu-Gi-Oh player's perspective. So, Matt, who are you, and what's kind of your gaming background?
Yeah, I'm Matt. My gaming background predominantly lies within Magic: The Gathering. I play a lot of Commander, and I played a lot of Sealed and Draft when those formats were a lot bigger as far as, Wizards of the Coast is concerned. But what's interesting about that is none of those formats basically have an equivalent within Yu-Gi-Oh! There is no sense of cracking a pack, building the best deck you can out of the commons and like passing it along. Um, the closest you get to that is opening a structure deck and playing with it, but there is no sense of random. So like I kind of miss that aspect of it, but Yu-Gi-Oh has brought along its own challenges and learning curves along the way. And in that sense too, like with Magic, when I was playing Standard, I was playing like random jank off meta, stick a bunch of commons in a deck, and you can't really do that with Yu-Gi-Oh either. So it
Yeah.
is it is very interesting.
So I mean, no, you're definitely right. There's some unique aspects to Yu-Gi-Oh where the game is so archetypal based that adding in that spice or that jank is a little different. But when you do add it in, it's extra spicy and it's extra janky. Um, Now, do you still play Magic? I definitely have a big, strong Magic background as well. But are you still playing it, or?
Yeah, I still play a lot of the pre-release events, and I still keep up with some of the standard meta. And I do play a lot of Commander. I play in a Commander league once to twice a week. And yeah, but I do predominantly, I would say, play Yu-Gi-Oh now more than Magic.
I found myself leaving playing Magic once or twice a week to come play Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's very, I think, funny because I know a lot of people who have experienced a very similar thing.
Well,
Um,
it's just that Yu-Gi-Oh has this draw to it. Where Magic, I think, is inherently more of a complex game on the surface, but the interactions that you get in Yu-Gi-Oh aren't something that you can find within Magic, which does create this allure to go check it out a little bit deeper.
oh, absolutely. Now with Magic, what kind of decks have you gravitated towards? There's control, combo, mid range. And how do you think those decks differ in comparison to, like, is control the same in Yu-Gi-Oh as it is in Magic? Is combo the same?
Yeah, so I predominantly played Rakdos aggro and I played Esper control. And what those of you who don't know what that is a combination of red black is the color combination called Rakdos, and that has a lot of the big red fast aggressive boys and a little bit of the control and board wiping capabilities of black, as well as some of that card draw at the expense of your own life. And what Esper is black white blue combination that is strictly focused on control. It's about controlling the board, making sure that you're playing the game more so than your opponents, and you always have a response for that big threat that they might play. And comparatively to Yu-Gi-Oh, like, the equivalent, I guess, to those control decks are like a trap deck. But that being said, in Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't have like the sense of, okay, they have this much mana open. There's this many cards in rotation that cost that many mana in those colors that they could potentially have in hand. It's like once you set a card, you don't know what's there. Um, you have no idea, or even if they have one card left in hand, you have no idea. You can't even make educated guesses unless you have some of those cards that give you that hand knowledge.
Now, and I definitely can agree with you. I definitely think there's that illusion of that card could be anything, and in the lately with Yu-Gi-Oh, I feel the formats have been changing pretty rapidly. Or at least not necessarily the format, but the tools that we are using within a format are changing pretty rapidly. So that card could be anything. Um, what type of decks have you played in Yu-Gi-Oh?
So I started out funny enough playing Fluanderese, and I lasted with that for about 2 weeks. But as simple as a deck as it is, I was looking for something that gave me more of those complex based interactions more than setting up a board and passing and hoping they didn't have the out.
When you
Um,
say setting up a board, does that mean normal summon Ravina?
yeah, that would entail normal summoning Robina, ending on M-Pen Barrier Statue, and going, well, I certainly hope they don't have the Godarla. um, So, in that sense, it wasn't teaching me too much about the game. Well, I can agree that there is a skill set in playing the game, especially now without that barrier statue in that deck. It's definitely more of a skill-based deck. But at the time, I wasn't learning a whole lot, and I wanted to kind of pick up a deck that did teach me those complex interactions a little bit faster, just to try to get me caught up to speed to where all the people that I surrounded myself were. Um, so I did pick up Sprite from that point.
No,
And I
no, definitely. I'm sorry if I interrupted. When you say picked up Sprite, did you pick up Sprite pure, or did you play like a variant on it?
um
Um,
Yeah, so at the beginning it was 100% just pure, and we still had elf, and we still made Toad every turn, and it was in that sense a very oppressive deck where if you got to set up, you were recurring Toad 3 times, and you still had a red or carrot negate, so you were sitting on 4 or to 5 negates, and you just kind of hope your opponent didn't have Dark Ruler, and if they did, you would still starter, grab the second carrot or red in your deck, and still be able to have a negate present.
yeah, I'm glad Red's gone.
You're glad red's gone?
Yeah, not
I'm
Red.
glad elf is
Carrot.
gone.
Carrot is gone. I'm glad. Not Carrot. Oh man, like Elf. You're right.
Elf.
You're right. I can't
Elf.
listen. I'm glad Elf is gone. That card needed. To, it's so good. It's so unbelievably good. Uh,
But it's funny though, because in that sense though, so what elf did was it became a crutch for Sprite, and it kind of forced you to make elf every turn. And once that did get banned, it opened up this deck a lot more.
yeah, I could definitely agree. We have a lot more variants. I think when Sprite first released, people looked at like the OCG and they thought about Live Twin Sprite. I think was a little popular over there, a couple other variants, but we in the TCG up at least until recently. I mean, we had Runic Sprite, we had Naturia Sprite, you had Pure Sprite, I mean,
Tri Brigade Sprite.
yeah, Tri Sprite. We got to see some of that. So and I guess Pure Sprite, I guess, felt the best for the most part, as long as Elf existed. So we didn't get
Yeah,
to
so
see.
there was definitely no reason to play anything else. Like, why mess with such a deck that always consistently ended on such a strong end board? So there was no reason to play anything else in that engine.
Definitely. I could definitely see that. Um, and now I know the secret. You're not playing as much Sprite anymore. What else have you been playing?
I was testing a little bit of Eldritch for a couple months, but ultimately ended up coming back to Sprite.
Okay, okay. Now, are you playing like Cybers Eldritch? You're playing the really cool pile, or
No,
what are
I'm
you
playing
really playing?
Dogmatica Eldritch.
How many
Yeah.
floodgates are you running main deck?
12?
Yeah, I was gonna say 9, but I mean,
No, I think you might be right. It is 9. Well, main deck 9, side 3 more.
oh, okay. So
So we ended
it's
a total of
completely
12.
different. You're right. You're right. It's completely different.
Yeah, so,
Um, Now I know Eldritch was something you were more recently playing. What was it like going from something like Fluanderies to Sprite, and then to playing a very completely different deck, like a stun deck or a trap deck?
Yeah, so, when I was playing Sprite and someone flipped over Tikaboo, it never felt good, right?
Okay.
You kind of hope you had a non-engine monster in hand, and I hope that it wasn't Cybers either. You hope you had some kind of beaver and a Sprite name so you could Phoenix it away, right? Um, but going from being on the receiving end of the floodgates to flipping them, it definitely is a very interesting feeling. Because if I'm being brutally frank here, when I was looking at trap decks originally, you kind of look at them and go, okay, this is meant to be the most oppressive deck possible, and you have to look at it from the sense of you're playing so that your opponent can't. That's the whole point of
Oh,
these floodgate
absolutely.
things.
And I
Um,
think I think that logic is something that you see in Magic the Gathering is the best way to play Magic is when your opponent can't play. And I guess that could be said for most card games. But I think with Yu-Gi-Oh, we definitely see floodgates have a different place. They feel extra unfun in Yu-Gi-Oh. There's
yeah, I
there's
can agree to that. Which is why I came back to Sprite
mm,
now with the new Melfi package.
the new Melfi
Ever
package.
since Gamma got banned, and I'm very sad. Um, but yeah. it did create a new perspective, at least for me, to trap deck players. I do think like they're very good introductory points into the game. As we know, Trap Tricks is probably the cheapest deck to go pick up cards, stick together, and play.
Definitely,
Um,
it's up there as far as like lowest lowest cost of performance.
and it has a generically, I guess I would say, easier entry point as far as even skill base, where like the cards are relatively simple. That's not to say you can't play them at a high level, but the cards are relatively simple. So you read a couple like lines versus the paragraphs that some of these other cards have, and it's a lot easier to get into and understand than some of these more complex combo based decks. And again, that's not to say like trap decks don't have combos. We have Labyrinth running around right now, and they have a little bit of flexibility to do some stuff that you wouldn't otherwise expect outside of Shut You Down. You have Dinomorphia running around, and that trap deck wants to spam you with big monsters, bring themselves down to one life point, and then make sure you can't play the game, which is another take on trap. So I've definitely at least opened my eyes to the possibilities of trap decks recently. But ultimately, I think what's best for my playstyle right now happens to be Sprite.
Oh, absolutely. I think one thing that a lot of people don't see is something like a combo deck, a sprite. You have a lot of different lines that end on multiple interactions, and you have a lot of different types of flexibility that you can do to play around different scenarios.
Yeah, it's a toolbox
Whereas,
deck, 100%.
yeah, and I would say most decks have a lot of toolboxes, even just main deck because their extra deck is utilized separately or differently. Whereas trap tricks or most trap decks, you're ending on five pieces of interaction, hopefully, because you're setting five. Um, and those are your five pieces. Good luck. I think the way you're forced to understand sequencing when you play a trap deck is really helpful into providing insight in becoming a better player or understanding timing differently as a newer player.
Yeah,
Um,
100% agree. And so coming from Eldritch, especially, there are some variants that do play those hand traps. Not too many, and they're always sideboarded, not mainboard. But you are kind of even going second, you're setting five passing, and it's whatever those five cards are, you have to use them to the best of your ability when you're staring down a full board with probably two or three Omni Negates, and hand traps, and you don't even know what else could even be set in their back row because they probably have an imperm or something at the time, right?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the I guess devil's advocate to traps themselves is for going first is what you always want to do, and if you can't, if you're gonna win a 90% of the time going first, you should have a very poor matchup going second, and that doesn't work at all times. It doesn't play out that way, but I think it's relevant um, to the insight, and those interactions being limited is definitely unique, and you don't see I guess in a game like Magic, your turn two, you're playing your two drop. Turn three, hopefully you're playing a three drop.
Playing a
Maybe
three
you're
drop.
saving
Yep.
it. You've
Whereas,
you've got your options are so segmented in other card games versus I'm not trying to say trap decks are the best, but Dinomorphia is. But the sequencing is.
yeah, but yeah, no, I 100% agree with you because it becomes a question of like, so obviously you have five cards, you have six going second. Maybe one of those cards is playable, if you're going second, but otherwise you're setting five. And that becomes the question of they still have the negates. How can you sequence your spells so that ultimately the one that you need that is going to ruin their board resolves, right? How are you looking at baits? How are you looking at making sure at least if you can't destroy their entire board that you out that one monster you really need to? When do you want a solemn strike? You know, if I'm sitting on, two floodgates and a solemn, maybe I flip both, bait them into hitting the negate on the second, and then strike it. Or
Yeah,
you
yeah,
have to kind of look at it from the sense of what is your opponent trying to do, and what is the best way that I make the most value out of these five cards that I have set because I have nothing else. Anything hitting the grave, it's not relevant this turn. And how can I make it through their turn?
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, now you played a bunch of different decks. You've been a little bit back and forth. What you've become a judge as well. You're a level one judge at least.
I am a level one judge. Yes.
What's the reason you became a judge?
Honestly, just to learn more about the game. And I know like the judge exam is accessible to everybody, but the resources that you get access to once passing those, it's a gold mine for just learning weird ruling interactions that you don't think would come up until like you see that this one ruling applied to this situation, and now we have two cards that read oddly similar to those. Um, so how would this resolve? And it prevents you, and especially at a locals level where you have some of those players that will attempt to rule shark you, or just shark you in general. Like you don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be on the receiving end. So I tried, to circumvent that by going, hey, I'm a new player. What's the best way to get the most amount of information I humanly can about the game in the shortest amount of time? Become a judge.
Absolutely. No, that I mean that was great. And I think it was a fantastic idea. I think another question I want to ask is, what has your locals experience been? How have you felt the Yu-Gi-Oh community has interacted with either, how you have interacted with it and how maybe it's interacted back?
Yeah, so the Yu-Gi-Oh community is one of those like love-hate relationships, right? Where you're always gonna find that one guy at locals that you're not gonna like playing against every time, and you know what? Somehow you're always gonna play against him like
Every time.
round five. Yeah, never know when. It's just gonna happen, and at the same time, it's like you'll also find that one person who you make great friends with, and maybe they'll always beat you at the beginning, and that when you finally become a better player, and you finally understand what's going on, and you finally beat that person for the first time, you feel like on top of the world, and you have that mutual discussion, like, oh, you finally did it. Like, okay, you beat me. Let's talk about the game. Let's talk about where things went wrong. And you start having those discussions, even if it's not your first time beating someone. After a game, you'll find people sitting there going, could I have done something differently to kind of outplay or change the line to ultimately have won this game?
I would definitely agree. I think that is one of the I've had a very similar and amazing positive experience. I mean, we go to the same local, so we know it's great. Um, One thing I found in the Yu-Gi-Oh community is there are a lot of people who want to know what they did wrong or or they should have done differently. It absolutely exists in Magic or in other card games. I'm not discrediting that at all, but I feel as though there's a wider array of individuals who want to get better or think about what plays they made and how could they have corrected them, and whether that just be the wonderful group of people we're surrounded by, or if that's the community as a whole. But I definitely think it's very interesting that I feel as though the average player wants to have a better insight, and I found that wonderful in the card game.
Yeah, I mean, even new players. I've been sitting across from someone round one at their first time at locals ever. And unfortunately, just having the experience, I will kind of swiftly to owe them. But then they'll sit down and they'll ask, like, "Hey, what could I have done? Okay, let's look at your deck. You said you're new. Let's take a look and break down." And you'll find these interactions, um, and people willing to help. You'll find people, hey, you're new to the game. Here, have these like staples. I have 12 copies. They're really cheap. Add them to your deck and improve it. Like you have these types of interactions that it does promote a very friendly environment. And unfortunately, some of those few people in every community has those few people that kind of ruin it for a larger portion. And you know you might end up meeting one of those people at your locals. I've had an interaction with someone I haven't particularly enjoyed before. And yeah, like it comes with the territory. They kind of pack up, walk away salty. Like, okay, like even if you ended up losing, they'll still pack up and walk away salty. Oh, you were playing a trap deck, or you were playing a meta deck, right? Like, think about when tier format happened. Even if you beat tiers, just the act of playing
Oh,
against
it
tiers
was
was a
a
not
lot for
enjoyable
most
experience,
people.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so that being said, it's like, but predominantly, most of the interactions I've had in locals, and I've attended a bunch of stores within the local area, they're all amazing. And it's just unfortunate that you do end up running across those one or two bad eggs in the bunch.
No, yeah, definitely. Another thing that I know you've done is you've been to not one but two regionals within your first half a year of playing the game. Did you go to any large Magic events ever?
No, not really. Mainly due to the fact when I was playing Magic pretty extensively, traveling wasn't really an option.
Oh, and
But
it's definitely not for everyone. Um, how would you say your first regional, and then how was your second regional as well?
Yeah, so my first regional was less than a month into the game. Prime tier format, not just tier format, cash tier format.
That
Photon Hypernova just
that's
came out.
right. It was the
Cash tier with
one
Filament,
weekend
the
where
one weekend in the
cash
awkward
tier
window.
was at
Yeah,
the fullest power, and everyone went knowing it was going to be abysmal. It was, if you weren't
yeah.
playing cash tier, it was.
So I'm talking a month into the game, maybe 2 to 3 weeks playing Sprite, in tier format, prime tier format no less. And I kind of had these expectations that I'd go in and do really well. Um Ultimately, you got a wake up call at your first one, right? I
Mhm.
won round 1, I'm going. I'm going to crank. I'm going to top 8. Round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5 happened, and yeah, we ended up going like not completely goose egg, but
Yeah, X4.
it, it is a nice little rude awakening in that sense. But yeah,
Well,
I
I'm
looked.
in.
I was sitting next to two of the other team members, round 2, and they ended up getting paired against each other. And this guy's going full tier combo, and I look him dead in the eyes, and the only things I hear out of his mouth was, "I'm so sorry." Because there's just nothing he could do. you
Oh,
know, and
well,
that was my first regional
yeah.
experience.
Being that it was your first, I'm happy you stuck with the game because I played at I believe that same regional, and it was not fun because I also wasn't playing cash tier.
No, if I recall, you ended up going to take a nap in the car
I
very
did.
shortly
I think I
after
went X2. I drove the 6 hours. I'm going to bed. And and that's what I think ended up happening. But so with the first regional being a wash, do you think it was still a good experience?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely put a lot in perspective. Like, I was kind of going X2 at locals, X1 at locals, some weeks, X2 at locals, others, and I kind of thought I had a lot more under my belt than what I actually did. Um, And yeah, it's definitely just a rude awakening. And granted, I'm not saying I was going X1, X2 every week. Like, this is only a month and a half, not even into the game, and I had gotten like two tops maybe out of that
Oh,
month and a
and
half,
that's
right?
gotta feel
Like
good.
top eights, not like first or second. And I'm like, yo, yeah, I'm like new to the game. I'm doing it. I'm getting in there. And unfortunately, it was a nice little wake up call. But comparatively to the second regional, that went a lot better. That was probably about 5 months into the game. Sprite was full power, pure. There was other variants starting to float around with Runic post elf ban. Runic twin sprite, uh, tri sprite. Like there was a whole bunch of random variants, and this is also, you know, with Cashier and a bunch of rogue. Oh my god, the amount of rogue. But I ended up losing that one round 1. And had one of the saltiest run backs, you guess I could say. Didn't take that second loss until a lot later, until like round 5, and I think X2 that day ended up topping, or getting their invite anyway, and I didn't take that third loss up until round 7. So I had that early loss, and just because you take that early loss doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a chance at topping, and I kind of ran with it.
No,
And we almost got there.
no, I definitely agree. It's one of those that early loss. It can definitely feel bad. Some people will let it get to their head. I mean, Nats last year, I it was I went X2 in the first 2 rounds. I just got dumpstered on, and then I proceeded to win my next 6 or 7, and then I got kicked out. But it just because you lose that first 1 or 2 rounds, doesn't mean you're out of it. And it, I'm good on you for sticking through, and I'm glad you played.
We didn't get the invite just yet, but
I think there's a couple
being
more
said, that
regionals
was
before
yeah.
a
There's
month
there's a
from
couple
now.
more before, but I mean, it was a really good experience. I will say, and especially at that level where I thought, my gameplay had progressed. And I'm surrounding myself with good players, getting the good play testing in, um, talking about meta calls, deck decisions, last minute edits, and that's something that you can't really do early on to the game, right? You kind of have to look up a deck and run with it. And that's not to say you can't build your own deck early into the game, but it does create a lot of problems without that game knowledge or experience of defining what's a good card versus a great card versus a
Yeah,
player card.
and I think in Yu-Gi-Oh we definitely run into the scenario where a good card in comparison to a great card, and in comparison to a bad card, is a lot harder to define, because there's no set rotation. It's, this mediocre card can immediately become the best card, based on X release or X unhit to the ban list.
Yeah.
So trying to wrap your head around what is a good card and what is a bad card, is it's difficult, but the more you do it, the better I think you get at the game. The better, when you communicate with others and share opinions. One person's good card also might be another person's worst card, and
A
another's
hundred
best
percent.
card. Like,
It
I
actually
love
depends
Ghost
on
Ogre
both
to
sides.
death, and I love Winter Cherries, but Winter Cherries is not a great card at all times.
That's what
So
you think. No, Vanquish Souls is gonna come show us all
you're right.
who's
You're right.
wrong and
Vanquish
wrong.
Souls.
So.
I'm gonna get the $1,000 CRs, max rarity, and scrub out. That's my goal.
But yeah, no, I probably spent after the elf ban a month and a half trying to resolve Sprite myself. And this is keep in mind, a month and a half into the game. I don't know anything at the time. I went down this rabbit hole, new week, new list, new locals, new list, trying everything. And on paper, it seems like the most cracked deck possible, right? But when you start playtesting and there's awkward shuffling comes in and like you get the awkward hands around it,
And then you
um,
play against the awkward rogue deck.
and then
You
yeah,
you
and
you.
that's where I ended up going just back to Sprite Pure at the end of it because that's what made the most sense to me. I tried all these weird variants. I tried resolving Pure. Um, don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Just
mean,
don't.
that's
You're
not to
right.
say that you can't.
No,
But
definitely.
and that's like the thing. What I'm saying as a new player, like yes, you have access to these cards. Yes, you can go look things up. And yes, it's not bad to take a deck list that you see online and make a few edits. What's your play style? Make some changes. But you can't go in, thinking that you can resolve a whole format by yourself that early into the career of the game, right?
I'm sure we all know a guy who wants to put in that spicy tech card, and make B Troopers number one, and
Yo, what you got against B Trooper Beatdown right now? Hold up, hold up.
unban Verte. I guess I don't know. That's
I'm
the best
bringing
way.
Infernity. I'm bringing Infernity to the top. Just you wait.
I listen. You do it. I want to see it. Please set a couple monsters in your back row and concede to MST. I want that to happen. Um, but I guess another topic is, are you've done well, enjoyed the last two regionals. Are you expecting to go to Nats?
Yeah, I am expecting to go to Nats. Couple regionals before as a chance to get my invite. Worst case, LCQs are there for a reason.
Absolutely.
Um, 3 rounds, go 3-0.
Just
Sounds easy.
just be better. Just be
Don't
better.
choke. Go in it with an open mindset though, and I'm going into it with an open mindset. This is my first Nats. I'm not even a year into my game experience, and if I don't get that LCQ, I'm not going to stress. I'm going to go play side events. I'm going to go there, have fun,
Side
just there for the
events.
experience. But I am going to attempt to get that LCQ, and play main event. And, see what happens.
Yeah, listen, I mean, similarly, I've only been playing for, I think this is my second year, and my experience last Nats was, I got my invite at an OTS, and I went, I played, and I got like under. I was in the top 300. I don't know if I was above or below two, but like, I feel like I did great for playing the game for less than a year and going to Nats, the year before. I lost those 2 rounds, and man, did I just want to lose another one so badly, because I wanted to go make some money playing some side events, sell
Side
some
events.
tickets.
But
Like,
I mean, in that sense, though, it is kind of addicting in the sense of like you're saying, you just wanted to go play more, whether
yeah,
there's
like
a
I
monetary aspect to it or not. Like,
no,
it's just
definitely
one of those
you're.
games you always find yourself wanting to play more of. What did I do wrong? How did I get better? How do
eh,
I get better? Where do I go?
Absolutely. How can I get better is a question I wish everyone would ask themselves. It's such a healthy mindset to have, towards growth. Now, now we're getting to the spicy question. You're a newer player, so to speak. What was your perspective on this most recent ban list to hit hopefully cash out of being the number one best deck?
I
What's your
think
your quick perspective?
I think this ban listed nothing. I'm gonna be 100% honest. Yes, okay, they banned the Link one for super heavy.
I think that was pretty good. I think Super
A
Heavy would be
pretty
extremely
big hit.
strong. Yeah, it's a huge hit.
Deck is still incredibly strong. We're still talking about, Two card starters, which, as we know, Sprite lives on and is one of the
You
best
know,
decks.
that's a very fair
You're
argument.
you're, you're taking out some of these one card starters, but at the same time, like, the
There's
deck
still
still has
9
the
of them in the
potential.
deck.
There's still
Yeah.
9 of them in the
No.
deck. Like, it doesn't change too much. People are harping on the fact that deck is dead. I really don't think it is. Yes,
No,
it's not going to be seen as much. It might hit rogue tier now, but
I
it
think
is still a
it's
very strong deck.
definitely. I think it's an engine. Yeah. I mean, how many times do you think you've lost to cash? And do you think the semi unicorn is gonna
Uh,
change that or?
I've lost the cashier more times than I'd like to admit.
I'm
Um,
sure we all have.
yeah, but that being said, no, this ban list really kind of left, and I hate to say it, Kashtira unscathed. They lost the Ablosis. They can't rip from your extra deck. Okay,
Diablosis was a big
great,
hit.
perfect. That was a big hit. I will
But
agree with that.
you
Unicorn
know,
2 does nothing for the
I
consistency.
agree. I agree with that. I mean, I think the Diablosis hit. A lot of like you at the higher ends. A lot of people weren't even going into the Diablosis in the game.
No,
I
they were a
think.
Rise Heart pass or Shangri Era pass.
Yeah.
It was never, and you would find those times that you could overextend it. And this is what happened as people started to fear Nib, and they could choose one card to end on, and more often than not, that was a Rise Heart.
Macrocosmos on a stick, plus
Macrocosmos on a stick, plus the ability to banish a card on the field face down.
better
You
Dryden.
just
You're right. Like it's definitely
um
a. I think it's still strong. I
and
think
the
it.
ability to activate once per chain to equip,
Yeah, I think it's great.
every chain, you could never get rid of that thing's effects. Once it was live and it was hard to deal with.
Well,
Um
no, I can definitely agree to that to a big extent. I'm sure we'll talk about it plenty more. Um, Now, I guess my final question to you is where do you want to go from here? You've gone to two regionals. I know Nats is on the table. Is a place you want to go. What are you looking for? After Nats, are you just excited to see what cards come out? Do you want to make Sprite the best deck? Where you know?
I'm open to a lot if I'm gonna be honest. Sprite to me, whether in the game or personally, to me, Sprite has lived its life cycle to me. I've had great fun with the deck. I'm not opposed to playing it. It's taught me a lot about the game. It's taught me how to get value off trades going one for one. It's taught me how to utilize resources. And I'll always be thankful. It's also gotten me, into the idea of deck building and going down weird rabbit holes and trying to find the new spicy tech and that sense because of its toolbox nature, right?
Mhm.
Um, but can I see myself playing something other than Sprite in the future? Yeah. Um, will I stop playing Sprite tomorrow? Absolutely not. It's such a fun deck. Right. I'm not just gonna drop it. We lost the starter in the ban list. Deck's consistency is a little funky now. Perfectly fine still, honestly.
Mhm.
Um, the fact that you had 3 starters before, compared to 2 now, yes, you're changing your brick ratios a little bit, with the Melfi stuff. I think the deck's too insane when you're ending on 3, 4, 5 negates and hand traps, including your back row, obviously, um, to kind of pass up, right? You're ending on a bounce, a carrot red negate, um, probably a double cross, and a hand trap. So the deck is incredibly strong, even without that starter. You still have the ability to recur things from grave due to double cross. Double cross to me is probably one of the strongest cards in the game at this time, being as flexible as it is as a utility card that is searchable in engine.
No,
Um,
I can definitely see where you're coming from. But well, that's lovely to hear, and I look forward to talking to you some more.
yeah, thanks for having me, and I look forward to seeing y'all in the
Absolutely.
future.
All right. Bye.